Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we bring you the latest information and analysis from the world of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the BRICS. Now today I want to talk about the current trade war between Donald Trump and the rest of the world as he imposes tariffs on everybody and every place. Let's look at China and how it's responding. Now China's decided to halt the purchase of energy from the United States in response to the US trade tariffs. It's imposed its own duties on American LNG, oil and coal. And the potential for the new tariff war between the world's two largest economies could further reshape global trade and energy flows. And how would Russia benefit from this ongoing dispute between the two major economic powers? Well, in response to Trump's trade war, China has imposed tariffs on American energy products. For example, 15% has been imposed on LNG and coal, and a 10% has been added to crude oil and, funnily enough, farm equipment. Now, this is following the Trump administration's imposition of an additional 10% tariff on all Chinese imports into the United States. Now, let's remember that Donald Trump's first term in office, the US and China exchanged similar blows, with Beijing halting American LNG supplies from 2018 to February 2020. Now before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and my website SCOBRICSinsight.com to further develop it. You can do this by making a small donation, which is done by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Everybody donates does get a personal thank you from me, and I'm thanking all of you who have donated generously in the past and those of you who are about to. Now this led to American LNG being redistributed to Asian markets where prices were higher than in Europe. Consequently, LNG didn't reach Europe, remaining in Asia and being delivered to Japan and South Korea. Currently, the price differential between the Asian and European markets has narrowed, and that's indicating the likelihood of American LNG going to the European market. And that could potentially displace other suppliers such as Qatar, but again, Qatar's already in a dispute with the EU. So Qatari LNG may go to China, according to Igor Yushkov, who's at the Russian Energy Security Fund. Qatar previously diverted large volumes of LNG from Europe to Asia due to the complicated and expensive logistics of the European market, as well as the fear of a Houthi attack preventing the use of the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. That said, small volumes of LNG were imported to Europe from Qatar. At the same time, the US supplies small volumes to China, with only 4.3 million tonnes of LNG shipped out of 77 million tonnes imported by China last year. So therefore, China's the capacity to easily replace the lost volumes, for example, with Australian gas. At the same time, Yushkov believes that American LNG will go to Europe, partially taking the place of the Australians and the Japanese and Korean markets also. Alexander Frolov, who's the Director General of the Institute of National Energy, has stated that it's more profitable for the US to supply LNG to the EU and to Latin American countries than to China, given the need to pay duties. At the same time, he believes that this most likely will not affect the volume of LNG exports from the United States, and he also believes that China will be able to manage without it. I mean, it's not as if there's a shortage of suppliers. I mean, in the event of China losing 6 to 10 or maybe even 20 billion cubic meters of gas, that's not going to result in an energy deficit for the country, according to Frolov. Ultimately, if there's not enough gas, China can cover its needs by increasing coal production and burning coal. That was the approach they took in 2022 when the Chinese companies reduced their gas purchases due to the huge and higher costs of gas had become because of the shortage and the problems that Europe was taking by buying LNG after not buying Russian gas. It's also worth noting that supplies via the Power of Siberia in 2025 will be 38 billion cubic metres, up from 31 billion cubic metres in 2024. So that's enough to cover the loss of volume from the United States LNG. Now, I mean, this is a planned increase in supplies by the Russian pipeline, the Power of Siberia, which is going to reach its maximum possible design volumes, as we've said already. I mean, China's a growing market, and it's likely it won't have increased its purchases from LNG from Qatar or from pipeline gas from Central Asia. I mean, the ongoing tensions between the US and China in the gas sector is a favourable opportunity for Russia, as it's in advanced negotiations with Beijing for the agreement on the construction of Power of Siberia 2, and that's going to have a capacity of 55 billion cubic metres of gas. I mean, Russia stands to benefit from any confrontation over energy with the US and China. It's also said that the Americans will continue to put pressure on China regardless of who's president in office, whether it's Republican or Democrat. I mean, they've now got, apart from Russophobia, they're gunning for China. They see China as a major rival and they want to stop it. I mean, China needs to consider the population possibility the US could try and cause a resource famine for China. And the result of this is that China needs to sign contracts with Russia and others, but particularly Russia, for the Power of Siberia. I mean, the pipeline will take several years to build, and it will take more time to actually get to the significant supply volumes. Plus, the volume of oil supplies to China from America is pretty small, 9.6 million tonnes last year, 500 million tonnes of exports. China's exports from the United States are not significant, with its daily imports of 11 million barrels compared to 6 million barrels per month from the US. I mean, China has the capacity to easily replace these supplies. Yuskov notes that primarily supplies low sulfur light oil to foreign markets and predominantly gas concentrate, and there's plenty of grades like that available. Consequently, China can easily substitute American oil without any major impact on its own market. And plus, should prices for these grades of oil increase, Russia stands to benefit given its supply of the Eastern Siberia Pacific Ocean grade to China, which will also become more expensive. Suppliers of American oil are also restructured and easily find new markets. The primary issue facing the oil market is the potential for a collapse in global trade. And in this day, if the trade wars persist and the intensity between China and the US, when costs rise and there's problems selling goods, you reduce production and the transportation of goods. This in turn results in a decline in the consumption of energy, particularly oil-related products. Now, if this phenomenon becomes widespread, there'll be an oversupply of oil in the market, and that will cause a drop in prices. Now, a decline in oil prices could potentially lead to a reduction in the profitability of oil production products in the US. And that will bring down production levels. Oil production volumes in the US will certainly decline if they drop below the $70 and fall to around $60-65 a barrel. That is, Americans just can't cope with that. The decline in prices makes it unprofitable for the US projects, and they'll just give it up. I mean, in terms of coal, the US is not a significant supplier to China either. I mean, last year, Beijing imported 12.1 million tonnes of coal from the US, and that's only 3% of its total coal imports of 352 million tonnes. There's possibility that Russia could benefit for opening up the further market for Russian coal. I mean, should this happen, the price of Russian coal would increase for the Chinese market, and it shouldn't be ruled out. I mean, many coal companies in Russia have become unprofitable. They no longer supply coal to Europe since 2022, and there's difficulties with the sale of coal to Asia, and its price is falling. According to Sergei Tereshkin, who's the CEO of Open Oil Marketplace, the marketplace for oil and raw materials are falling because foreign trade measures, particularly with China, which are not as stringent as a complete ban on coal imports that it did for Australia, which was in effect from 21 to 2022, and that helped Australia lose its status as the largest supplier of coking coal to the Chinese market, which it lost to Mongolia. So the imposition of a 10% tariff will result in coal suppliers incurring a cost of only a tenth of the price of the raw material supplies to China. Furthermore, the general stabilisation in prices of the raw materials market will play a role in minimising customs duties. In 2024, the average price of thermal coal in East Asia was $136 per tonne, which is less than half the average level of $345 per tonne in 2022. So it's important to note that the ongoing conflict could lead to further hostilities between the US and China, as well as a potential truce and the lifting of current tariffs on both sides. I mean, Trump has successfully negotiated an agreement with Canada and Mexico, effectively postponing the escalation, and he's already known that uses tariffs as a bargaining chip, believing it'll boost his negotiating position. Trump's approach is seemingly to enter negotiations from a position of strength to beat the table. Consequently, it's plausible he'll reach an agreement with China, just as he's done with Mexico, China and Colombia. That said, it's likely to be challenging to address the current trade imbalance of the United States. Despite the existing tariffs on Chinese goods, the trade between the two countries is still huge, with imports from China into the US is hundreds of billions of dollars, and the trade deficit of the US with China is in the $300 billion range. So it's unclear how they're going to alter the current trade balance in favour of the United States. Imposing 10% tariffs is an ineffective solution to this issue. So, in my opinion, there's going to be fun times ahead in these trade wars, and there's never a dull moment with Trump around. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and if you want to help me out, click on the thanks button and make a donation. I'll see you all again soon.